So hello and welcome back to another video. Today you find me situated, or tonight should I say, situated in my front room, and I'm just about to start getting into this edit. But you might be wondering why I've got this backdrop and not a lake backdrop. That's because I have fallen that far behind with the edits for numerous reasons, to be quite honest. Computer malfunctions, health issues. And not only that, I think the main key thing is just the time in order in which it takes to bring these videos to you guys. There's a lot of sat down time between that before you actually get to see it. I think, give or take roughly a 40-minute video, that's a good 30 to 40 hours worth of my time sitting here editing them. I haven't got help like a lot of these big companies have. They've got like all sorts of like shortcuts, so to speak, of LUTs and add-ons and all that thing, but the videos that you see are all done by my hands within Premiere Pro. So yes, anyway, I'm getting off track now. Basically, you may have noticed that the home fen video from last year has not long gone live. Now that was from October last year, and since then we've got to catch up on Rosemere. Now I have got some absolute incredible fish to show you. I have had a phenomenal season on Rosemere. Up until my recent 2 sessions, currently as we speak it is now shut for spawning. I have got a couple of separate videos towards the end there, but what I've decided to do is bring it right up until my good friend Kenny Dorset had Harris at a mega £60. I think it'd be rude not to finish the video on that point, and believe me, you're gonna want to stay tuned to watch that. It was absolutely phenomenal, not just for the fish but for Kenny himself. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was sat lakeside at the time trying to catch Harris myself, but to see Kenny catch it, somebody who's been in carp fishing for that long, and to enjoy it and experience it like he did, it was just phenomenal. So that is where this video is going to end. But for now, I'm going to kick it right back to August last year, and that pretty much picks up from where my last video ended, part 2 of season 2. I'm going to call this one part 3, but it's going to be a few sessions combined. I'm going to try not to make it too long and waffle on. I'm going to highlight and obviously show you the fish. So yes, sit back, grab a cup of tea or a beer and enjoy. It's going to be one hell of a video. Well, with 48 hours ahead of me, I wasted no time in selecting my swim. I got myself situated in the gaps, and to be honest, that's where I found the fish on my last trip as well towards the end of the session. I ended up moving into there for a couple of hours, and I did have a fish then also. Anyway, it was still obvious that the fish was still present and in the area. I seen a few fish milling around, so I wasted no time and began to get them rods out there. To prevent making too much disturbance, I actually used the baiting pole and the leading rod to locate a few likely looking areas, especially down the left hand margin, as I was unfamiliar with that area. I already had the wraps for the other 2 spots that I was going to be fishing, After my last session in there, I always take note of all the spots that I fish in Rosemere. It really is a big edge that. If you arrive to the lake and you can get them rods out with a minimal amount of disturbance, it stands you in good stead, especially if you want a quick bite. So with all 3 spots sorted and located, it was time to start preparing the rigs. And as always on Rosemere, it's my take on the Take Anywhere rig. This rig has actually evolved for me since fishing Rosemere, because usually I like to fish it with a wide gate with silicone on the shank. But since fishing on Rosemere, I actually experienced a few hook pulls, and it was becoming more and more frequent. So I swapped over to a curved shank pattern and replaced the silicone for a rig ring, and since then the hook holds have been brilliant and I haven't lost as many fish. Now I decided on an all-out boilie approach on this session, and you'll notice that I'm putting a match the hatch on all 3 rigs. They're actually hardened hook baits then that I've pimped up myself. All 3 rods was wrapped up, ensuring that I was fishing accurately. And as always, a couple of PVA nuggets on the rigs before I cast down. Now with all 3 rods sorted and ready to go, there's another thing which I wanted to do first, and that was to get some bait out there. There was still a few fish milling about in the area, and I didn't want to go plunging any leads out there. You know, as I mentioned before, the fish are easily spooked by the lead going in on Rosemere. And I've found that if you put the bait in before making the cast, it tends to push the fish out the area and they do come back in. There's been trips where, you know, I've made the cast, I've scared the fish and the fish just haven't returned. It's meant moving swims and starting all over again. So it's a good edge, you know, getting the bait out there, push them away with the bait before you decide to get them rods out there. Now I decided to put the left hand rod out with the bait and pole, and this is because of the spot that I was fishing. It was a very silty spot and I didn't want to sacrifice on lead size and rig size. As you know, I was using short rigs and a 4-ounce lead, so I just didn't want it to plug in on the cast. So that was it then. The rods was finally out there and we was fishing. The bait had been deployed and the traps was finally set. Now it was time to sit back and start soaking up that atmosphere. There's nothing better than looking out across the lake, looking for them key signs. The anticipation of the bite, that's what really does it for me, and I'm sure it does it for you guys as well. Just sitting back, looking out across that water. As soon as you start to see any fish moving in the vicinity, or one of the spots start fizzing up, God, does my heart start racing. The anticipation builds and builds. Anyway, I had to wait a little bit longer than I anticipated, and it was actually 24 hours into the session, and then this happened. he is, look. 31.6. Looks like he's got a bit of spawning damage on his tail, but he is a lovely fish. I am one happy chappy, especially when there's not much going on around the lake. It does definitely seem like they are just about switching on, because Aaron's behind the camera at the moment and he's just told me he's done the pictures for the big common. So Ian, who's stalking in that back bay, looks like he's having it away as well. Hopefully we shall slip this one back and find another one. Yes. Boy, was he angry. I think it's pretty safe to assume he was more than ready to go back. So after returning that fish, I got the rod back out there and I scattered another couple of kilos of bait in the general area. I think it's worth mentioning as well at this point, the fish was rather moody and I wasn't seeing as many out in front of me. However, it didn't stop me trying, but despite my best efforts, no bites was forthcoming for the rest of that trip. So let's move it on to the next session. I arrived for another 48 hours and I've got myself situated in the lunar swim. Now as you can see, it is a glorious day. The weed is absolutely horrendous at the moment. However, I was seeing a few fish in the vicinity, so I started off pretty much the same as I did last time. I pushed the fish away by baiting up first. Now on the old tactics front, it was an all-out boilie approach again, and I went in with pretty much the same as I did last time. 20mm hardened bottom baits, and I also put out a snowman presentation as well, something which has done me quite a few bites in the past. I'm a great believer in if you fish the same, you always catch the same. So it is sometimes nice to put something else out there that's slightly different to the others, just so you can sort of gauge and see if the fish respond to it differently. Sometimes they just want something different on the day. Now getting the rods out for this session was fairly straightforward, to be honest. Even though I'd only fished the lunar swim a couple of times previously, I still had some spots marked out in my notepad. But what I did do is I just had a quick feel with the leaden rod just to make sure that no fresh weed had grown over the spots. And luckily for me, 2 of the spots were still absolutely pucker, so I wasted no time in getting them in first. Now the third rod that I was putting out was actually a new spot, and it was in between 2 weed beds. It looked a really good spot, and after a quick investigation with the leaden rod, it confirmed that it was a nice hard spot, and it was actually a clear channel which run between the weed beds. As you can see from above, it looks like an absolute jungle out there, and it's just about selecting the right areas in which they're going to cut through the weed. Your eyes are your biggest game changer on Rosemere. They really do tell you a lot, especially when the sun's up and it's a nice warm day. If you can follow the routes in which they're taking round, it does help you to catch a few fish. So that was it then. It was time to sit back, let the anticipation build, watch the water, and most importantly, get that kettle on. Well, as you can see, it turned out to be a gorgeous evening. Just sitting by the lake, watching them clouds pass by, looking for any signs. But I couldn't help but think to myself that there was a slight case of deja vu setting in. The fish was very moody. They were showing signs of moving around, but not really picking up on any positive signs of feeding. And I couldn't help but think it was a repeat of my last session. Almost 24 hours had passed before I received a take on the left-hand rod. Well, just check this out. Please still be on. Well, good morning, and I am absolutely knackered now, let me tell you, after that. I had to run all the way around the lake to get the boat, because this one weeded me solid. He's not a monster by any means, but he's just gone £27 1 ounce, and he is a lovely dark one. Really is a nice fish. And I am pleased to have caught one, because it wasn't looking very promising out there. The bites certainly are hard to come by at the moment. Since first light this morning, been looking out across the lake. There has been a couple of fish moving out in front of me, but again, not paying any attention to my spots. They're just sort of drifting about on the surface. So when this one rattled off, it caught me by surprise, let's put it that way. Anyway, enough waffling. I'll bring you up to speed as to what's actually happened this morning a bit later, because I've got quite a bit to do now. Oh, and there he is, look. He'll do, he will do in this morning sunshine. Thank you very much. Mwah. Yes. Let's spin him round. Oh, and that's his better side. He's behaving himself. Oh, I am a happy boy. And come off the banker rod, off the back of the pads. 20mm hardened hook bait. I've not put any more bait in, but now I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot more bait to put out there. And not only that, that long rod that's been fishing at 9 wraps, I'm going to need to push that out even further. With 24 hours of the session still left, I began rebaiting the spot that I had the bite from. You'll notice that I was trying to keep everything as accurate as possible, tight to them lilies. I was a bit concerned about spreading loads of bait everywhere, as I wasn't really sure how much had been eaten. The fish was very moody, and I hadn't really picked up on any signs of fish feeding. So once I'd done that, it was just about getting that rod back out, clipping the lily pads right tight into that gap, but ensuring I got a nice drop, knowing that I was presented and fishing as accurately as possible, doing everything that I could to try and winkle out another bite. But as I mentioned before, I felt a case of deja vu setting in, and it was pretty much a repeat of the last trip. That was to be my last bite for the session, even though I did try and make it happen on the last morning, moving into the oak swim. I spent most of the day watching Harris swimming about on the surface, and I was quite content just chasing him around for the last few hours of the session. However, it wasn't meant to be, and that was it for that trip. So another couple of weeks have passed now, and we move into the 22nd of September. Now things around the lake are really starting to change, especially as we're transitioning from that summer period into the autumn period. One thing's for sure, the nights have definitely become a lot colder, but not only that, the fish behaviour has started to change also. I'm back fishing in the gap swim, which I'm rather pleased about, to be honest. I'd been keeping a little bit of bait trickled in on that left hand margin. I just truly believed that that spot was going to kick off at some point. It's not a spot that which I've seen many people fish, to be quite honest, just because of the tree being in the way. You've either got to get in your waders or get the baiting pole out, and it is really thick, deep silt, so it doesn't strike me as a spot that's been fed on much. Now you may notice at this point that each session seems very similar to the other, baiting up heavily with boilies, pushing the fish out the area, and fishing them big 20mm hardened hook baits. So I definitely think it's worth highlighting at this point that we have been consistently catching on each trip, whether it be one fish or a couple of fish. The main thing is I've been consistently catching, and the lake has been fishing very tricky. So until I need to start addressing things to keep them bites coming, I think I'd be daft to start changing things when I've been so consistent. But change is definitely not too far away. With Rosemere being so shallow, it does tend to shut down quicker than most. When I say shut down, I mean the fish to go into winter mode a lot quicker than other lakes in the area. Now, with most of the disturbance already made and all the baiting up done, all that was left to do was to get them rods out there and get them traps set. Perfect. Well, it really did feel like it was a rather long day, and it seemed to have taken forever to get to this point. But finally, I was sat back, looking out across the water, and feeling rather confident about what I'd done. And I went to bed feeling rather positive. Well, we've only gone and bloody had one, haven't we? Yeah, and it's caught me off guard. One, it's night, as you can see, it's just gone midnight. A bite in the night is just unheard of on here for me. I think this is only my second night bite on here. Another one is it's a common. It's only the second common I've had from this lake, and not only that, it's been raining since it got dark, so I can't bloody believe it. It's gone against all the rule book. But I'm absolutely pleased as punch. Give a really good account of himself. It's an absolute blistering take. It went all solid. I had to go out in the boat. All that was happening, just like it shot round past the island. It's the island rod that I've had the bite on. Shot round past the island, and I pulled it back towards me, and I just pulled it into a weed bed. Tried putting the rod down for a little bit, but it just won't come in free, so I just went and got in the boat, got all geared up, life jacket on, off I went, head torch on. Yeah, and sure enough, when I got out there, he was just sitting there in the weed, ready for me to net him. Good as gold. He's just gone £23 10 ounces. And there we go. Pucker. I know this light's not going to do it any justice, this fish, but you know, you can't retain the fish here. But yeah, I'm very, very pleased, especially to get off the mark so quickly after making all that disturbance earlier. All that effort was worth it. And there's the other side. He'll do for me. I hope that is not it for the session. I hope we're going to get a couple of bites. It'd be lovely to get one of them big uns. And it'd be even better to see Harris. But for now, he'll do for me. Lovely jubbly. Slip this fella back and we shall have a catch up in the morning. So after returning that fish back safely, it was time to get myself back to bed. By this point it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't, however, get the rod back out there. The lamp that I used to get the rods out at night, it decided to pack up. So I wasn't very pleased about that, but decided to get up at first light and re-put it back out there. And then it was just a case of sitting and watching the water for the rest of the day. Not a lot was happening. It's worth mentioning it was pretty damp and miserable and overcast. Good conditions for other places, but not very good conditions for Rosemere. I did, however, need to replace one of the rods because the tufties had picked it up God knows how many times. I just wanted to get that sorted and make sure that I was presented going into the last night. And then about an hour before it was due to get dark, things started to look a lot more promising. And well, you guessed it. Come on, baby. Plowing into that weed. That's a 30. Keep coming. You in? Yep. Get in. Well, good evening, and I wasn't expecting to be speaking to you this soon, but as you can see, we're just losing the light at the moment. I've had to put the lamps on, and I'm trying to be quick, so I want to get that rod back out there before I can't see anything. But it's a lovely fish, this one, £34.10 it's just gone, and I'm not too sure, but I think I've had this fish already this year. I'll have to check my pictures, but nonetheless we'll take it as it comes, and he's a good fish. Funny shaped fish, very distinctive. That's what makes me think I've had it already this year. Oh, and there we go, look. It's hard to hold, it's a funny shape. But I am one happy angler. Very happy indeed. Oh. Lovely fish, that. Oh, it's easier to hold that way round. Oh, that light's looking good from what I'm looking at. Yes, thank you very much. I really wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't. Oh, yes. What a trip. Oh, hopefully another one might still be on the cards. You just never know your luck, do you? Oh, anyway, I'm going to slip him back, get that rod back out there, and then we might have a little catch up before I turn in. But if not, I shall speak to you in the morning. Well, good morning, and it looks glorious out there at the moment, doesn't it? Clear skies today. There is some cloud, but it's sort of intermittent, but it's looking like that sun's going to break through at some point. We've just gone 8:30 now, and I'm rather tired this morning. A lot has happened since I last spoke to you, so I'll kick it back to last night. After I slipped that fish back, my main priority was just getting that rod back out there while I could still see what was going on, and I literally timed that perfectly. I managed to get the rod back out there, could just about make it out, and then top that spot up with another 1.5 kilos of boilies, and then I carried on, you know, just sort of cleaning up the carnage from catching that fish. And I had a sort of a savage liner on the left hand rod, and the bobbin sort of pulled up to the rod, and then the rod just started to bend slightly, and then it all dropped back. You just know that that's when, you know, a fish bumping into the line. I was almost ready to pick the rod up. That's how savage it was. And then, you know, you sort of sit there and think, was it a liner or not? But I know it was a liner. And anyway, then, you know, I had something to eat, got back, I think I got into bed around about 11 o'clock time, and then I awoke at 4:30 to a steady take on the left hand rod, and, you know, bobbin pulled up and it was just ticking away, lifted into it. Oh, I felt like a good fish, a solid resistance. I could feel it grating now. Anyway, cut a long story short, it weeded me up solid. I put the rod down, then it started to move again, and again I just pulled it straight back into whatever weed it had gone through. Put the rod down again, and by this time I'm thinking about getting the boat, so, you know, I'm getting my life jacket sorted, making sure I've got the net sorted, and then I hears it ticking off again, so picked up the rod. And then again the same thing happened, just pulled it straight back into the weed bed. So, you know, this time I thought there's no option, I'm gonna have to get in the boat. So head torch on, off I goes, gets in the boat, gets out there, and I tell you what, it really had gone through the weed, and the weed that it had gone through, it's top to bottom, absolutely top to bottom. I was out in the boat for at least 30 minutes. It felt like a bloody lifetime, to be honest. Just retracing my line through the weed, you know, kept pulling it out the way, and then I'd get a bit more line, pull that out the way, bit more line, until eventually I got over the top of my tubing, and it just felt completely solid. I couldn't feel any sort of kicking. Usually when you get over the fish like that, you know, it sort of startles it and it gets it moving and that, and I couldn't feel anything at all. So I was poking the net down, you know, just seeing if the fish was still there. I didn't want to carry on pulling at all if the fish was still there. But honestly, no, the fish had gone. The hook was attached to the weed. I had my sleeve on my jumper rolled right up under my armpit so I could reach down and unhook the rig. You know, after all that, especially, you know, that rod's been out there for 40 hours or so until that bite, sitting on that spot, I just knew, I'm sort of like, honestly, I was mortified, absolutely mortified. And then at this point, you know, it's sort of around 5 o'clock, I'm rowing the boat back, put the boat back, come back to the bivvy, and I haven't got any more rigs made up. So at this point I've got to sit and make a fresh rig up. I had to strip about 15 yards of line off just to make sure that, you know, that everything was alright. And then it was on with the waders and wading down the margin, rebaited. I've only put about 1 kilo over there, and then put the rod back out. And sort of by this time we're talking 5:30, 5:45 time. You know, it's getting light. I could actually see just enough to get the rod back out there. But then back to the bivvy. And honestly, since it's sunk in even more, I am absolutely gutted. I really am. I was that gutted I didn't sit up. I actually went back to bed. I thought that has just absolutely trashed any other option of getting a bite on that rod anyway. I don't feel confident of that left-hander going, not today. Maybe if I had another night, but certainly with the time that I've got left, it's hard to see where a bite is going to come from at the moment. If I am going to get another bite out of this swim, it'll be off that island rod. That's what I think. Anyway, I only went back to bed for an hour. I got back up at 7:30. Been sat here having a cup of tea, watching the water since then. And I have seen one fish sort of drifting around on the surface, and I actually went over to where the island rod is and dropped down and disappeared. And I'm thinking, come on then. But no, that was about 10 minutes ago now. So yeah, I'm sort of sitting here thinking, are the fish going to start moving around? Usually when the sun gets up like this, I mean the sun's not totally up yet, it's still rising at the moment. Usually it gets them moving around and there is chance of that daytime bite, you know. I mean usually you don't get any night bites, but just as it turns out, you know, that's 2 sort of bites in darkness for me on this session and 1 going into darkness. But another thing, a really noticeable thing last night, was how cold it got. 11 o'clock when I actually turned in, you know, I couldn't bear the cold any longer. That's the reason why I got in the bag. And this morning it was like pea soup out there. When I was out in the boat, you know, it was hard to see anything, to be fair. It really was cold. Well, I did say that this session was going to be one to remember for both good and bad reasons, and now you know why. So that brings us on to the next trip, and you'll notice from this clip that a lot has changed, and that's for good reason. It's actually been nearly 2 months since my last session. We're actually up to the 29th of October now, and autumn has well and truly set in. You'll notice that the leaves are dropping off the trees, and we have moved into cold water carping. Now this trip saw me fishing in a swim called the Cherries, which is actually on the back half of the lake. Up until this point I'd never even fished this swim, let alone fish the back half of the lake much. So it was out with the leading rod to make myself acquainted with the swim, and sure enough I did find some lovely spots out there. One was fishing out towards the island at 7 Raps, and the other one was just down to my left in front of the lily pads. Now I did mention it was cold water carping at this point, and this is where my tactics started to change. I was still going in with an all-out boilie approach, but it was the amount of boilies that I was putting in. I reduced it right down, and I wanted to keep everything as accurately as possible. So even though I was only fishing a few wraps out in front of that lily bed, I was using a spawn to bait up with. Now I already knew that this was going to be a tricky session before I arrived, because it had not been long since fishery owner Ben had put the catch report up for the month, and there'd only been 15 fish out for that month. But that was still really positive for me, because as you know, Rosemere is very shallow, and that cooling down period of the water can sometimes be harder to fish than fishing in the depth of winter. So that's 2 rods sorted and fishing, and the spots baited. But the 3rd rod was going to require a lot more attention, as I decided to fish a washing line method on this rod. Now this is a lovely clean gravel area, which is actually fishing in a stalking swim. So I made the cast over onto the other side and landed it in the trees, to be quite honest. However, once it was round there, it was just a matter of me getting round there with the couple of sections of the bushwhacker in order to place my rig and get the washing line set, and not only that, bait up accurately by hand as well. It was a really good spot that, and I felt really confident in it. So that was it then. All 3 rods was out there and we was fishing again. It felt really good to be back at Rosemere at this point. Even though a lot had changed since my last session, it was just really good to be sat behind them rods again, knowing full well what swims in Rosemere. It really is an incredible water. Now after all that disturbance that I had made, finding spots, baiting up with the spawn, I had absolutely no intentions of moving them rods. They was going to stay out there for the duration, or until something happened which meant I had to move them. But luckily for me, I didn't have to wait too long, as the next morning I was awoken to the sound of the R3 going off, and it was actually a drop back bite on the washing line rod.
Well, I tell you what, he is absolutely beating me up on the mat, and the weather is pretty savage at the moment as well. But now I've peeled that retainer back, it's a fish I recognise. It's a fish called Jack for obvious reasons. He's got one eye, a real character of the lake, and a lovely fish to boot. So yes, without further ado, let's get this bad boy up. Oh, and there you go, look. That's the side with only one eye. Good old Jack. Oh boy, he's made my morning anyway. And there's the other side. I'll tell you what, he ain't half got a belly on him. Proper old warrior, this one. He's got a couple of wounds which I need to treat before I get him back, but that is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to slip this little fella back and see if we can't winkle another bite out. As I mentioned, I can't wait to get over there and just see if that spot's been cleared off, and hopefully there's another bite left in it. You just never know. But either way, I'm a happy boy. Mwah.
Now, as you can probably imagine, I was more than made up with that capture. It really was a magnificent fish, and to see him at a good weight like that as well, it showed real potential for the winter that was about to come. So after seeing him waddle off back into the water, all I could think about was getting that rod back out there, feeling very hopeful of another chance before I went. I pretty much just repeated the process. Cast out over onto the bank again, went round there with a couple of sections of the bushwhacker and lowered that rig into position, and then finished off with a few handfuls of boilies, and that was it really. I didn't have any plans to move the other rods, and I just sat back for the duration of the session, but despite my best efforts, that was it, and it was time to move on to the next trip. Another 4 weeks have passed now, which brings us up to the 25th of November. And upon returning to the lake, I was actually quite surprised by what I was faced with. Everything had changed. You'll see the vegetation's all dying off, the weeds dropping back. Near enough all the leaves have come out of the trees now. This is what I consider to be winter carping, even though it's only the 25th of November and it's still actually autumn. It actually felt like winter. The nights was cold, sort of hovering around 1 and 2 degrees up at this point. But the main thing was there was no dramatic ups and downs. That's the key windows that I look for when I go fishing in the winter. I know I can only go when I can go, but if I'm gonna go and it's gonna drop down to say -5 and it's been consistently 3 or 4 degrees or whatever, that's a big drop and it really does put the pressure on you. I would actually look to go to a different venue when that happens, somewhere with a lot more fish in it. Now the biggest change to get my head around was just the inactivity from the fish. I spent a good couple of hours walking the lake, climbing the trees, looking in all the nooks and crannies, looking for any signs of fish or feeding, and I could not see anything, not even a bubbler, nothing at all. Now given it's shallow and quite clear, you'd think that you'd see them, but they really was hiding. So I had to revert back to my knowledge from the previous year, and I knew that the helipad swimmer was reliable for a couple of bites, especially when we moved into winter. It definitely was a good area of the lake last year, so that's all I had to go on. And with 3 nights to play with, you know, I felt confident that I was at least going to be able to see something to move on to, or I was going to start off in the right place, and I allowed myself enough time to make something happen. Now we'd already addressed the baiting situation on the last trip, and it was just to reduce the amount of bait that I was putting in, but I knew that I had to address things a lot further this time, and you'll notice from the mix there that there's no whole boilies in it at all whatsoever. In fact, that small couple of kilo bucket is the only bait that I brought for the trip. Now what I've actually got in there is I've got boilie crumb, I've got some 6mm pellet, and then I've just got some frozen corn. Now what I've done is I've put that in the bucket, mixed it all together, and I've actually given it the heat treatment before the session. Just boiling hot kettle water straight over the mix, and then just left it to sit for 24 hours or 48 hours before the session. That makes it nice and soft, and it makes it a lot more soluble. As we know, the carp's metabolisms do start to shut down in the winter and they eat less and less. especially when they're not getting any bait. It's worth mentioning that the lake's not very busy up until this point, so that it's not like they're continuing feeding. The only food that they're getting is the odd bit that the angler's putting in and the natural food source. Now, I'm not one of these that starts thinking down the lines of I need to start changing over to a nut bait or anything like that. I actually keep and stick to the bait that I've got confidence in, so I carried on using the same fish meal, but I do believe on washing it out. There was no added flavours or anything like that in there, no high oils or anything. Totally washed it out, so it appears that it's been sitting on the lake bed for a long time, and that's what I've got confidence in moving into the winter periods, and also reducing the amount in which you're putting in. So the next thing to start looking at then is obviously your rigs and your hook baits. Now, I don't change things too dramatically. The only thing that I've really done is I've scaled back on the hook bait size. You'll notice that I'm putting on a 15mm hook bait there, as opposed to the 20mm that I have been fishing. And also I decided to put one out with a yellow tipper on, snowman presentation, 15mm bottom bait with a 12mm pop-up on top, so it sits like a wafter. Now, I wasn't going to start compromising on rigs or anything like that. I still needed the strength and the durability. There's still big fish and there's still a lot of weed present in the lake, so I was fishing the same rigs. The only thing that I addressed is obviously the hook bait size. Now, all 3 rods was out in the pond and fishing. The tactics was pretty much sorted. I just needed to get a bit of bait in. Now, it was just enough bait for a bite really. 4 mini spoms of bait over each spot, trying to keep it as accurately as possible. And the other spot I could just go around and bait up by hand. I could keep it nice and tight that way, and it did minimise on disturbance a little bit. Well, it didn't take too long for the evening to start drawing in. It was actually 4 o'clock when it started to get dark. Them long winter nights was well and truly upon us. I did bait a couple of margin spots around the lake, just so I could go around and keep checking them to see whether they'd been fed on at all. Well, them cold nights soon turned into beautiful fresh mornings. Just a lovely time to be out on the bank, winter fishing at its finest. It's worth mentioning as well that I'm the only person on the lake. Really can take the atmosphere in when it's like that, just you against the fish. However, I'm 48 hours into the session now, and it's become very obvious that the fish are not moving about in the daytime. Even looking back at the drone footage, just not seeing anything at all whatsoever. So I'm really glad that I baited them margin spots around the edge, because it's one of them that give me the information that I needed. After the first night, one of the spots had been cleared off. I rebaited it and then went and checked on the following morning, and sure enough the bait had disappeared. So with that in mind, I moved round because it's the only thing I had to go on for the last night. And I decided on fishing just the one rod. I moved into the cherry swim. Put the one rod over onto the far side to where you can see it, went round, baited by hand, and that is what led to the first bite.
Oh, my God, is it absolutely freezing this morning. It's causing me havoc with the lens and the camera at the moment, but I'm pleased to say we've got a fish. When it wasn't looking like a bite was on the cards, we've managed to snag one. Just take a look at this scaly little banger. 28 pound 10 is just gone. Oh. There we go. I am one happy boy. Yes. And I've just snuck the rod back out there. Who knows? Anything could happen. There's still time yet. It's early. I've got a couple of hours left before I've got to go. You just never know. And there's the other side. Oh, pleased as punch now. I'm going to slip him back because my hands feel like they're dropping off. And he's getting a bit frisky as well. But I am absolutely made up, I really am. Oh, thank you very much. Mwah. Oh, Scopex squid. always pulls the goods. Well, how is your luck? I don't quite believe it, but the rod has gone again, and I have got an absolute peach of a fish to show you. 39 £2, and he is absolutely lovely. He really is. I'm absolutely blown away. So happy. The effort has been all worthwhile. Just wait till you see this. Oh, and there he is, look. Absolute unit of a fish. Oh, so happy. He's a bit lively. Oh, spinning round. Come on, baby, turn round. There's the other side. I am absolutely chuffed to bits. I really am. Oh, what a mega fish. He is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Oh. Yes. Let's get him slipped back. Well, what a result that was. 2 bites on the last morning. I really was pleased with the effort that I put in. And just think, if I hadn't have baited them little spots in the edge, I'm sure that session had turned into a blank. It really made the drive home feel a lot sweeter, let's put it that way. Another couple of weeks have passed by now, and I've just arrived for another 48-hour session. It actually brings us up to the 7th of December. And even just driving through the gate, it's obvious just how much things have changed once again. The cold temperatures have really set in now, sort of hovering around 3 and 4 degrees in the daytime, with nighttime temperatures going down to the minuses. On this session, we was actually due for a bad storm. Storm Barrett had moved in, 60-mile-an-hour gusts of winds. However, that didn't deter me, because I really felt like I had something to go off on this trip. After the last trip, baiting them couple of spots in the margins, little did I know just how much it was going to change my winter. So I started off looking in that side of the lake. Now previously, before I left, I did rebait them spots. Now I know it's been a couple of weeks between and I didn't expect to see any bait on there. But one of the spots was absolutely polished and it really looked like the fish had been in and feeding on there. So that gave me somewhere to start. So I started off in the point swim. Now the drone footage that you're looking at now was actually taken from a previous session, but you can see from that area of the lake just how abundant the weed is, and you can probably notice that it looks really shallow as well, and that's because it is. It's an average of 3 to 4 foot deep, not an area which you'd really expect to find the fish in at that time of year. However, that's where they wanted to be. So I wasted no time. First things first, I needed to layer up and make sure I was warm. I prefer putting on layers rather than one big suit. I hate feeling restricted. And then it was just a case of getting the tackle out, getting over to the swim, and not forgetting to get my retainer and landing nets from the lockup. So I already had a good plan of attack and I felt like I was in the right area. But there was one thing that was concerning me, and that was disturbance, especially when I look back to the last trip and I was using a spawn to bait up with. In hindsight, that was probably the wrong thing to do, as I spent 2 nights blanking in that swim before moving. So I decided that I wasn't going to make any casts at all on this trip, and I was going to rely solely on the baiting pole to get the rigs out there. Another thing which I decided to do was only to fish the 2 rods,
That was to bring the disturbance down to a minimum. And not only that, in my mind, it was all about that spot that I'd been baiting and that was glowing over there. I felt like that was going to be my best opportunity of a bite. So anyway, the first rod I just deployed out to the overhanging bush. Is a nice clear gravel area that. And I was going to be putting out 2 snowman presentations over them spots. One because they was polished off, and also I forgot to mention that the last 2 fish both fell to the snowman presentation on the last trip. And the bait, that's exactly the same as well. In fact, that's the bait that I had left over. I'd just popped it in the freezer and pulled it out again ready for this trip. A lot more focus and attention have gone into putting the second rod out. You'll notice I've got the baiting pole out again, but I'm actually dropping the lead as close to the bank as I possibly can, because I decided the washing line method was going to be my best plan of attack for that glowing spot. And that's for a couple of reasons really. The first reason being that the spot is only 2 foot deep, and the second reason being it's just behind a weed bed that comes right up to the surface. I was really concerned about having my line running through the swim, especially in that shallow water. So this was a much better option, you know. I could go down to the spot and have a real slack line to the bank stick. And not only that, it puts me in more good direct contact with the fish once I've had the bite. Now I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit of an ordeal to fish the washing line method, especially given it was halfway around the bloody lake. But I felt like it was worth the extra effort, and after lowering that rigging and getting the line laid spot on, it really felt like it was only a matter of time before the fish moved in. All that was left to do really was to get a little bit of bait in and then get back round to my swim and just sit and wait patiently. Sit and wait patiently, he says. That couldn't have been any further from the truth. As Storm Barra moved in that evening, and I was sat with a driving wind right in my face, with heavy rain as well, I had no option but to put the bivvy door on and just hunker in for the night. But don't you just love it when a plan comes together? And sure enough, that first morning, that's exactly what happened.
Well, good morning, and it's a good morning too, despite the horrible conditions we are faced with at the moment. It's the Carp interruptus alarm clock that went off this morning, and I've got a lovely little comment to show you. £23 and 8 ounces is just gone, and he come to the washing line rod as well. I don't think there's any point putting it back out until later on this afternoon. On the other rod, the coot has already picked me up on that as well, so really I've effectively got no rods fishing at the moment. But in any case, we've got a fish on the mat, so without further ado, let's show you this little fella. Oh, he's cold. Oh, and there he is, look, just check him out. Absolutely scale perfect he is. And I took a liking to the snowman presentation. Oh, that is so cold. Oh, I am pleased with him. Oh, absolutely made up. Quickly show you the other side. And there he is, look. Oh yeah, happy boy indeed. Slip this fella back, get some breakfast on, top the spots up, put the rods back out this afternoon. I think that's the plan of action. So yeah, result. Hopefully it's not finished quite yet.
So after returning the fish safely, that's exactly what I did. I just pressed that repeat button. And hey, maybe I was asking a bit too much, asking for another bite, but it didn't stop me. But no more bites were forthcoming, and that turned out to be the only action for that trip. And it actually turned out to be the last session of the year as well. But little did I know just how long I was going to be away from Rosemere, as the next trip brings me right up until the 9th of February. Nearly 9 weeks had passed now. And not only that, I did mention that I did take some time off due to ill health. I really wanted to get back down there, but due to my anxiety and depression, it really stopped me from doing what I love doing. Unfortunately, I just had too much things going on at home. Now, even though I still wasn't quite 100%, it felt really good to be back. What better way to medicate the mind than to be lakeside and back out doing what you love the most. Straight back into the point swim with the hope of pressing that repeat button. I'd spent a lot of time thinking about that spot whilst I wasn't there. Now the exact same tactics as last time was deployed. Fishing only 2 rods, both on a snowman presentation. One was dropped with a baiting pole on that same spot over the overhanging bush, and the other rod, well, that was all about the washing line method again. I couldn't wait to get round there and have a look at that spot, and sure enough, it was still glowing.
Well, this is my consolation prize this morning and the first carp of 2022, but it's not the first bite. I lost one last night at around about 1 o'clock in the morning and it felt like a really good fish, but this one here is one of the new pennies for the lake. Absolutely immaculate little fella he is. I do believe this is one of the new ones that Ben did not so long back. I think he put 4 or 5 fish in if I remember rightly, and this is one of them. And he's a greedy sod. He took quite a big bait, to be honest. Fished a snowman presentation, 15mm bottom bait with a 12mm topper. So he is a greedy one. He obviously wants the bait, but they are responding to the bait. Obviously I've lost that fish and I did pick up a couple of liners as well, so fingers crossed for tonight. Well, here he is, look. Absolutely scale perfect. He is going to grow on to be one of the sought after fish in here, I am sure of that. Beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to slip him straight back, get everything sorted. I want everything pucker for tonight and see if we can't make another bite happen. So we're just approaching 4 o'clock in the afternoon now. It's become overcast and the rain's begun to move in, and with that it's got the fish on the munch. This one took me by surprise, I'll be totally honest, but the washing line rod just sprung into life. Massive drop back, and I thought at first it must be a bird at this time of day. Looked out and I thought it's a fish. It is, it's actually a fish on, and he is an absolute banger. I think it's one I've had before, I'll have to check the pictures, but nonetheless, £40 3 ounces. I am absolutely made up with this thing. Oh, makes up for that loss, because believe me, that felt like a good fish. Oh. What a gorgeous fish. And there he is, look, a February 40 pounder. Am I a happy boy or what? And he is an absolute peach. You have made my trip. I'm not bothered what happens now, but I do think there could be chance for another one. So I'm going to slip this fella back and see if we can't make another bite happen. Oh, and there's the other side, equally as nice. Oh, chuffed to bits. We're slipping back onto the next one. Well, good morning, and it is a damp and chilly one. However, it hasn't put the fish off. We've got another one of the stockies here to show you. After I caught that other one, I was thinking to myself, how many has he put in here? So I had a quick look on the group messenger chat, and he put 7 of them in just before Christmas. And this one is just like the last one, an absolute peach. I tell you something, when these fish grow on, they are going to be very sought after, because this one, well, I think this one's even better than the last one. Slightly bigger, £12.4 this one's just gone. Just check him out. What an absolute peach of a fish. He is gorgeous, he really is. He's going to grow into an absolute stunner. Not that he already isn't, mind you. And there's the other side. Mega looking fish, that. Absolutely mega. Anyway, let's stick him back, and then I'm going to start the old dreaded pack down. But it's been a very productive trip. 4 bites and 3 fish landed, with the icing on the cake being that 40 pounder. What more can you ask for in February? A very, very good trip indeed. So let's fast forward another 3 weeks on. It's actually the 1st of March now, and currently you find me situated in a stalking swim, and that spot is absolutely glowing. Now it's also worth mentioning that I was down the week before, and I actually ended up fishing in the point swim once again. I did winkle out another bite from that session, but it wasn't very productive, and I just felt like that area was becoming exhausted. But as a backup plan, I have been baiting this swim, and looking at that spot now, it is absolutely glowing and it looks prime, ready to drop in on. Now the last time that I fished this spot, it was actually back in November, and that's when I had that lovely 28 and 39 pounder. Now since then, it's worth mentioning that this spot has always received a little bit of bait from me. Not a lot, just a couple of handfuls on each visit. But over time I've watched that spot become clearer and bigger. It really did feel like the perfect time to be dropping in onto this spot, especially now with the point swim spot becoming exhausted. I felt like I'd had the best from that swim, and it was now time to start targeting this area. And after all, I felt like a good bit of prep work had gone into it at this point. Now, having fished the cherry swim a couple of times already, it was just a matter of getting them rods wrapped up and some bait out onto the spots. Now what I actually decided to do was to fish 2 rods at 7 wraps and bait up with a spom on this spot. That way I could keep everything nice and tight and still keep the bait to a minimum. Now I wasn't too concerned about baiting up with a spom on this spot, because I just felt like the fish was starting to move about a bit more now. And not only that, the lake was starting to see a bit more pressure from the other anglers. So the lake itself was now starting to see a bit of bait here, there and everywhere. Maybe that's what was getting the fish moving around. But in any case,
All my attentions really was on that stalking spot. Now previously when I fished this spot, I fished it on the washing line method, and that's purely down to the amount of weed between me and the spot. However, on this trip the weed has dropped back dramatically, and I didn't feel the need to put the washing line method on this time. Instead I decided a semi-slack line would be sufficient. After making the cast, I could also go round there and see my rig sitting perfectly on the spot, and I could deploy the bait right over the top of the rig. It really was sitting perfect. Confidence was sky high. I don't think there's a better way of fishing. When you can see your rig and bait sitting there, you just feel like it's only a matter of time before something comes in and has a little feed. It also makes it feel a lot easier because you can keep nipping round to the spot and see whether it's been fed on. So that was it then. We was finally fishing. The hard work had been done and that anticipation of the bite was building. But I went to bed feeling really positive about what I'd done. It was only a matter of time.
Oh, and there we go, look, check that bad boy out. 40 pound, 10 ounces. Happy, happy boy indeed. Get in there. What a unit. Quickly show you the other side before I put him back. Yes! Oh, and there he is. Oh, magnificent fish. I think it's Sharon's fish, but I'll have to confirm that with Ben. Anyway, it's angry. It wants to go back. But I'm chuffed to bits, I really am. Yes, 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 yes.
Well, that turned out to be the only bite for that trip. However, what a fish it was. It didn't stop me trying for the last night though, as I did rebait that spot and get the rod back out there. However, on the last morning, I went round and checked before leaving, and it appeared that the spot hadn't even been touched. So that brings us on to the next session now, and this brought a really good change in the weather conditions. This is what we've all been waiting for, spring to start finally kicking in. It actually brings us up to the 22nd of March now, and as you can see, I'm climbing the trees and I'm seeing a lot more response from the fish. Seeing them fish moving around, boy does that get the juices flowing. I spent a good bit of time searching around the lake before making a decision. It really was nice just walking around that day, soaking in the atmosphere. That switch had definitely been flicked. The flowers had started to blossom, even the insects had started to hatch by now. And I wasn't even too deterred about seeing the geese and the ducks. It was a sure sign that we was transitioning from winter into springtime. Another really promising thing to report as well, me and Kenny had spent a bit of time up the tree, sat watching Harris. She was just sitting there in the reeds, but she looked absolutely massive, and we knew it was only a matter of time before she'd grace the banks. And with that in mind, I found myself situated in the lunar swim. Now, two of the spots that I decided to fish I was very familiar with, as I've taken fish off both of them spots before. I didn't need to get the leading rod out, it was just a matter of shipping the pole out there and dropping the rigs and bait. Now, with the fish being visibly a lot more active, I did feel like a few changes was in order. And not only that, with the changing conditions as well, I just felt like it was the right time to start making a couple of tweaks on the old bait situation. But one thing that wasn't going to be changing was the rigs and the presentation as well. Still sticking with the snowman presentation. However, I will add that one of them was tipped with white on this trip. But that was just to be different, so I wasn't fishing all three the same. It's something I do like doing that. Now, the bait change wasn't going to be too drastic. I just wanted to start introducing a few whole baits, as I felt now was the right time. and I also wanted to increase the bait a little bit. Normally up until this point just a couple of scoops full of bait is what I've been putting in over each spot, and now I was putting in around about 5 or 6 scoops with a couple of handfuls of whole baits. The spot that I'm baiting up at the moment is actually for the third rod. It's on the far margin of the lake. What I decided on doing was to cast the marker float out and walk round and bait up. That way I could keep everything much more accurate. And not only that, sometimes it's disorientating when you get round there and trying to figure out where you actually made the cast. Just having that marker float there ensured that I got everything bang on. So the only thing left to do now was to get that last rod into position, and it went in there first cast as well. I was really positive about what I had done. However, the next morning told me a different story. As I awoke and peered out across the lake, I sat back watching the rods for quite a while, but it became pretty obvious that the fish had moved off. But luckily for me, I'd baited a couple of margin spots as a backup plan, and sure enough I picked up on signs of a group of fish that was feeding in a swim called the Runway, so I had itchy feet. It was time to move. The first thing I did once I got into the swim was to go around and check the spot, and it had been completely cleared off again. It was looking really good for a quick bite. So soon as the coast was clear and I couldn't see any fish on the spot, I ran back round to the peg, got the baiting pole out and got our rods out there as quickly as I could. And it didn't take long at all. It really was a matter of minutes before I received the first take.
Well, the effort has finally paid off. After doing a blank night in the lunar swim, I decided to come down into the Runway. I will bring you up to speed as to what I've been doing, but for now let's take a look at this fish. It must be one of the quickest bites I've ever had from here. The fish was there was 4 fish feeding on the spot, and I used the baiting pole, dropped it in there, put the rod on the rest. I sat down on the chair and it was away. I couldn't believe it. And the culprit is a nice scaly 23 pound 8 mirror. Then he's feisty. He gave a good account of himself as well. He tried to make it into the trees. Very angry, but there he is, look. That'll do. Lovely jubbly. Let's hope that there's a couple more in it. Got one night left, and who knows? Who knows? He's a lovely fish though, absolutely gorgeous. I do apologise for the dapple sunlight. It can't be helped. I've got big popular trees behind me and conifers. I just can't find anywhere. Steady. And there's the other side. Well, I'm going to slip him back, and hopefully it's not the last time you see me.
Now, before I even had a chance to get the rod back out there, just after slipping the fish back, I received a phone call from Kenny, and he had a special fish in the net waiting for us, a fish known as Little Harris. Just check this out.
What you got there, mate?
1 46 pound Rosemere carp. Unbelievable, PP out here. I'm over the moon with this. Absolutely stunning fish.
Excellent.
Over the moon, mate. Glad to be here with friends to have it and all.
Absolutely perfect.
What a cracker. Stunning fish, mate.
Look at belly on it. Look at the size of its got.
What a cracking fish.
You've earned that one.
Oh, mate. I thought this was going to be my third blank. Third blank of 2 sessions of trip. 2 days of trip. Fucking hell. Unbelievable, mate. Well done, Ken. Very
Well
other
done,
side.
mate.
Come on, baby. What a fucking lump. It's mint and all, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, what a fish.
How's that, Paul?
Spot on, mate.
What a stunning fish. Well worth the wait.
Little Harris.
Little Harris, £46. Lovely job.
Yeah, boy.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome,
You're a
mate.
gent, mate.
That's what we come to Rosemere for.
Yeah, and it just, Paul, eh? That's what it's all about, mate. Ooh. The frogs are calling you. Look at it. Look at that. Thank you very much, fishy. You beautiful creature, you. Fucking lovely. Wangers on the banger.
Well, what an incredible fish that was. It really is one of the gems of the lake, that. Little Harris, what an awesome fish. And it was really great to share that moment with Kenny. However, I still was keen and eager to get back round to the swim, and I wasted no time at all in getting that rod back out there. Even though I was really eager, it seemed the fish wasn't as eager as I was, and I was actually quite surprised that no bites was forthcoming for that evening, and I had to wait until the following morning.
Well, good morning, and it looks set to be a nice glorious day today. It was a chilly one last night, and to be honest I was pretty cold. Every time I got out that bag I was freezing, so needless to say I spent quite a bit of time in that sleeping bag. But it's rattled off this morning, not with Big Bad Barry. He is one of the small fish. I do believe it's one of the new fish that's been put in, but I'll have to confirm that with Ben. Nice little common. He's just gone at £9 8 ounces, so yes, a lot of growing to do, but I think by the shape of him he's going to grow into a big fish. He's got quite high shoulders on him. So yes, but after seeing Harris yesterday, it makes this look like a right little pasty. But I'm still smiling, and I've been given the okay for another night, so I'm going to leave it till about dinner time, and then I'm going to have a good mooch around and see if I can't find an opportunity. I do believe there's another chance in this swim, but I just feel like it's the smaller fish that are around here at the moment. So anyway, let's get this one up, slipping back, and then I'll see you again soon. And there we go, look. Miniature imperfection. Yes. And believe it or not, the 4 fish that I'd seen feeding on that spot yesterday, there was a small common, a big mirror, another small common, and then a sort of upper double mirror. Now I had the biggest mirror yesterday, and I do believe this is the smallest common. So, with that group of fish, you just never know. Am I going to catch one of the others before I move? Who knows? I'm kind of hoping another group of fish moves in. God, he's lively. And there's the other side. Right, not wasting any time. Off he goes. Mwah! Thank you very much. Go tell Big Bad Barry that we want him. We really, really do want him. Well, good morning, and it's pretty much a repeat of yesterday morning really. Another little pasty in the net. This one's one of the new stockies, and I do believe I've already caught this one. I think I caught this back in January. Very distinctive markings, and one of the scales that's lifted, that's what's made it more identifiable. He's just gone £11. But it's another bite, you know, that big and can't be too far away. I have got to leave at dinner time today. I didn't really have a chance to get the camera out yesterday. I decided to move into the helipad swim after seeing a lot of fish, and knowing that this is a better afternoon area, I just wasted no time. I got them rods straight out there. But anyhow, I'll show you this bad boy, and then we'll have a little catch up a bit later on as to what I've been doing. And there he is, look. Proper scaly little banger. Oh. And I tell you what, he went off like an absolute steam train. The alarm, oh my god, absolute one toner. It was that violent that even the other rod was bleeping as well. Crazy. Feisty little bugger. Anyway, let's put him back. On to the next one. Well, I do have to apologise for not being a bit more camera savvy on that last trip. But let's move on to the next session. Only a week has passed by now. It's the 29th of March. And this week couldn't have been any different to the last week. It really felt like spring had sprung last week. And now, well, we moved back into the minus temperatures. It even brought with it some snow on this session. However, this was going to be a trip to remember. I was quite keen to drop back into the lunar swim, especially after baiting it last week and receiving no bites. I felt like them spots might have been visited since last week. But despite my best efforts, this session turned into a blank for me. However, I did promise the grand finale. And well, I got that phone call from Kenny. And just wait until you see this. Absolutely phenomenal.
60 pounder. Jesus Christ alive. Steady, mate.
You on, Bobby?
Oh my God! What a fish! My God! That is incredible. Look at that. Oh my God! The weight of it. It's an incredible thing. I ain't got to push this forward for photo.
Good luck if you can.
God almighty. What a fish. Just can't feel it going. Oh, Christ. I've got to have a rest, Les.
Yep, drop it down then.
Just an incredible fish. Fuck me. Unbelievable. God. What a kipper. My God.
Ian, grab that side.
Yeah.
Matt, hold on.
Oh. Jesus, thanks. Look at the girth on the bastard. God almighty. It's got a couple of milestones on it. Arguses on it. One leech and one argus it had on it. Oh, you didn't like that, did you? Oh. Up she goes. Yeah, what a lump. Mate, am I pleased or what? Can you tell by my face?
I'm smiling with you, Kenny, mate.
Mate,
Can you push the head towards me a bit? That's it.
what a lovely fish. I cannot believe it. During the daytime as well. A daytime take. What a cracker.
Got plenty there, mate.
That's a stunning fish, isn't it? Look at that. Unbelievable thing, isn't it? God, look at that. That is unreal. Yes. £60.
Go on!
Get in there. That'll do, I'll put her back.
Yeah,
Done?
yeah.
Done in?
Yeah.
Mate.
Kenny? What you
Yes!
Go on, my son!
Fucking excellent. Wangers on the banger. As Del would say, suck my fucking still.
Yeah,
Get
baby!
in there. Mate. I can't believe it. I'm absolutely shocked to bits, I tell you. Thanks ever so much
You're welcome,
for all
mate.
your help. I tell you, don't worry about it, you can smash them up if you like.
Well, I really do hope you've enjoyed this edit. A lot of time and effort has gone into this to bring this to you. But what a way to finish. Such an incredible capture. And not only that, it was great to see Kenny catch it. The emotion, the elation, it really was great to witness. And it's worth mentioning as well that Kenny has been fishing over 50 years now. He's been carp fishing since way back in the 70s. And for it to still mean that much to somebody, it really was great to be a part of that. It truly was. Now, if you did like that video, don't forget to show some appreciation. Hit that like button, or at least let me know in the comments section. And if you're not already, please get yourself subscribed to the channel. I'd really appreciate that support. Now, the next couple of videos that are due to drop on the channel are actually going to finish off the season on Rosemere. 2 separate videos, 2 separate sessions, but them 2 sessions turned out to be my best sessions of the season, so you're not going to want to miss them. So keep tuned, keep your eyes peeled, hit that bell notification if you don't want to miss another upload, and I'll see you on the next one.